When I learned to pick a lock, I was like, that's really fun. Now I want to pick a harder one. And then I found a harder one and I picked that. And then I wanted to pick a harder one. That's kind of what happens. You just kind of keep looking for more and more challenges.
That took forever.
People think lockpicking and they immediately think it's, related to like criminal activities, which the people that participate in the lock sport community and the people that join the different groups and things like that, I mean, they're just there to do the hobby. They're not there to learn some secret mission to go break into something. You know what I mean? Those types of people you would never see or hear from. It just has a bad name, and it shouldn't, because it's actually a really great hobby. It's like doing puzzles. It's like you have to take all your focus and put it into that one thing. So everything else around you kind of disappears because you are focused so hard on that one thing and solving it. Lock picking is when you take a lock that essentially needs a key to operate, and instead of using a key, you use anything else. I once used a zip tie to pick a lock. All locks can be picked. It does take a lot of practice though, and some are easier than others, but again, even the easy ones take practice. I first got into lockpicking because I was like in one of those moods to like, I'm proving this is not real. Like, I was like, this cannot be true. And I was like, but I'm gonna try it, I'm gonna give it my best and I'll see what happens. And I could not believe when that cord turned to the lock open. I was like, what? And then I thought, oh, wait, it's that easy to pick a lock? And I was like, this is so cool.
Let's see.
So I fell down the rabbit hole.
And almost, there it is.
In order to pick a lock, you have to move pins to a certain place inside the lock. And, moving the pieces in order to kind of get that cord to turn and get the lock to open, it's kind of like completing a little puzzle. You have all the pieces, but you have to arrange them in the correct order in order to solve it. And so, it's kind of just like doing a puzzle.
All right, so this is basically just a 3D printed model of the front of a lock if you were looking down the keyway. So basically like this. When you put the key in, this key is going to raise these pins to a certain point. Once they get to this place we call the shear line right here, it frees the lock to open. Each key has just little cutouts all over it, and these cutouts coincide with the lengths of these little key pins here.
There's bypassing methods where you don't actually pick the pins, you just go straight towards like the inner body of the lock and you maneuver something around in order to let that lock open. And then there's actual picking where you actually manipulate the pins inside the lock. In locks where we encourage people to open their locks however they have fun doing it. Basically all you need for lockpicking is a lockpick and a tension tool. Two things make a lock work. First, you insert the key, right? And even though the key's in there, the lock's still not open. You have to turn it. When you turn it, the lock opens. When you pick a lock, you are actually just mimicking that without the key. So you have to have a turning force because you are going to eventually have to turn that lock. And you also have to have something that will move the pins. So you take a lock pick. You'll sit down to learn and your pick feels weird. It feels weird to hold the pick. You can't figure out how to get this tensioner to, feel right and go right. And then you're feeling in there and you're like, is that a pin? Is that something else? What am I feeling? And all this stuff goes through your mind. And you go and you do it every day and you try again and you try again and try again. And then eventually you get your lock open. You have to use pretty much all your senses to understand what's going on inside this tiny little space where you can't see, you can only feel. And so you listen for clicks and certain sounds. You're scraping on metal, like, you know what I mean? It feels like you're just kind of scraping and pushing around pins. And you have to be able to tell if a pin is binding, if a pin is springy, if a pin is set, if a pin is overset. And so that's where practice comes in. You know, you're able to tell what you're doing after a while. But when you first do it, trust me, you're like, I don't know what this is, you know? You don't want to practice on your locks that you actually use, like your house lock. You don't want to practice on that because you can damage a lock by picking it. As you move up into lock picking, you'll find more security pins, tighter tolerances, and it all makes it harder to pick. And then eventually you get into locks that have more than one locking mechanism. So you'll have one that's a pin tumbler lock with pins coming down, but you also have a sidebar in there. And the sidebar is operated by side pins, which are these tiny little pins in the side. What happens is the harder a lock is to pick and the more you have to put into it, the better you feel when you get it open. It's like the biggest, I don't know, you just kind of jump up and down. Like I've literally stood up and jumped up and down and been all crazy and everybody's looking at me like I'm crazy, but it's a huge deal because these things are very, very hard to pick. It's like an accomplishment. So one after the other, you're making all these little accomplishments and makes you feel proud of yourself because that's a lot of work to get a lock open. It's not easy. You know, it's something you have to focus on and practice, and it's a lot of fun. And I think that people don't realize it can be such a great stress relieving, fun hobby. And they're very welcoming in the lock sport community as well. If you're new, people are willing to help you and, you know, give you advice and send you locks to try to pick and things like that. There's plenty of information out there if you look in the right places.
A lot of times when you first learn to pick, like, people go, I got it open, but I have no idea what I did. Oh, there you go.
Same thing.
There you go.
Cool. Yeah, I was just guessing.
Yeah, that's all you do.
So even if you pick one lock, not everybody can even pick a lock. So the fact that you can pick one at all is a huge deal, and it's something to be proud of, you know?
Thanks for watching. Subscribe to discover more hobbies and visit notjustahobby.com to learn more.